Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. This panel is about the acceleration of change in the retail landscape. Over the next 3 to 5 years, there's going to be a compounding of changes to the current retail business model, and that pressure for change will primarily come from changing customer expectations, new technology, and a changing competitive landscape. A couple areas that we want to just put on the screen as we get started are convenience economy, vehicle power sources, vehicle production, subscription services, autonomous vehicles, the connected car, vehicle service, and of course, the entire dealership business model. With us today are three agents of change. They are Steve Woessner from Blue Oceans Consulting, Brian Kramer from Cars.com and AccuTrade, and Ed Roberts from Bozard Ford Lincoln. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thank you, Ted. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Ted. Good to be here.
Steve, I'll kind of let you get the ball rolling here and give us the landscape, and then we'll get everybody's feedback on it.
Okay, sounds good, Ted. Thank you. I would just say, as everybody's aware, you currently see significant changes and different approaches happening in the car business. You're hearing a lot of things from OEMs in terms of what their expectations are. You're also seeing changing expectations for customers. And this is driving a significant shift in the car business. And one of the challenges you're going to face, in particular in the next 3 to 5 years, is despite the fact that dealers are very, very good at handling these changes, you're going to get multiple changes at the same time. And the speed with which those changes are going to happen is going to be significantly faster than anything you saw in the past. Now, the interesting thing about that is that's going to present a combination of challenges and opportunities. And so what I wanted to do today is sort of reach out to Ed and to Brian and see if they were looking at it over the next 3 years, what would they say the top 3 challenges, or well, let's start with opportunities, the top 3 opportunities for dealers in the next 3 to 5 years. So
I'll take
Ed,
that.
you want to, Brian,
Actually,
you go ahead. Yeah.
Fine.
So I would say, I guess I'll just steal Ed's thunder because I learned this from him, is obviously got to increase our row count. I'll leave it there because he's got the best technician apprentice program around. But I think that from what I learned from sitting on some calls with him, growing that technician base ultimately is going to fix a few different problems. And I think that I'll reference the problems as opportunities as well. I think that one of the problems is there's not going to be enough used car inventory. The way to solve that is to have a very strong service acquisition process. You can't obviously grow our row count unless you have a technician apprentice program in place. So those are the 2 that I would say. The third one I would say is a digital transformation actual strategy that involves culture, people change, process change, and just total digital transformation on all aspects of the business.
And I'll carry that a little further because, Steve, you've been going to dealers for as long as any of us here. And obviously one of the biggest resistance to a dealer is change. And we've never been good to adapt to change. We've always been resistant and kind of wait and see what happens. Well, we wait and see what happens, we fall behind. And so, yes, there is a lot of change coming, but it's opportunity for us to be in the forefront. And so I look forward to it. And just like Brian said, the challenges are really just opportunities. And I love having opportunities to chase after because that means there's progress in front of us. There's progression in front of us. There's growth in front of us. And people is our number one deal. And yes, we have an apprentice program here where we grow technicians, but we also grow other positions. We try to only hire entry level. We have a shortage of technicians in the industry, but there's not a shortage of people out there. So it's an opportunity of getting people interested in the business and then giving them the career path to get there. And we do that here, and we do it at a little bit different level because of size now. We had to grow into that size. But developing people, training your people, and hanging on to them is one of our biggest assets. And when we train someone and then we lose them, now we have to compete against them because more than likely they've gone somewhere else to compete against you. And it's easy to go somewhere, to leave one place and go somewhere and know what that person's weakness is or that place's weakness is, because now you have something that you can challenge them with. And so I challenge my people all the time that, hey, If there's something that you would do, if you was to leave here tomorrow and go to work down the street and there was something you could do to compete against us, why aren't we doing it already? And if we're doing it already, then don't have to worry about you going, because we eliminate the competition. And that's when we continue to step up the game and keep moving forward.
And I think it's interesting, and I think the three of us on this call, as well as everybody watching, have all learned from you these past couple of years, and how Brian referenced some of the needs at the retail level. You could really bring them back to the technician and that homegrown technician and that program, that apprentice program, Ed, that you talked about, and the people and the culture, and a lot of it starting, Ed, there with you.
Well, the culture is your report card. Your culture is a report card of what you're pouring into the business. And then the report card of your culture is really CSI. CSI is a byproduct of culture. But when you develop people, they're not referencing back, well, how we used to do it at this place, or what we used to do there, or whatever else. And I don't have 15 people calling them every day trying to pull them down there because they don't have their number to call them. So just there's so many things that comes from growing your own people. We get highlighted from doing it from a technician standpoint, but we try to do it with every level of the dealership, whether it's sales, warranty administrators, service advisors, quick lane personnel, transportation concierge, detailers. When you do that, then they become loyal to you, and you've helped them grow past anything that they ever thought they was capable of, and you don't have to worry about the attrition side of it.
Yeah, and as you've developed them internally, Ed, the nice thing is you get the right person in the right seat, and that accelerates the whole performance of the group. And then I think doing that also gives you the opportunity to find new streams of revenue. And I think that's something that a lot of dealerships are going to start to see as this technology comes in and different things happen. If you have the right team there and the right culture, you're going to start to pick up on those things, and different streams of revenue that you didn't even think about before are now going to become available. And I think the key is not to give those things away. Don't give them away to the aftermarket or to somebody else. Pull them inside, make them your own. And I know, Ed, you do a marvelous job of being a major factor in your community. I think that's a big deal.
Well, when you do that, it creates a high level of trust. And when you create that high level of trust, when you roll change out there, they embrace it and they roll with it. And it makes that change so much easier to do, because look at what we got going on in the industry. We got BEVs coming in at a rapid rate. And most of our guys that are here at the store never even driven one. So first thing that we wanted to do to create the excitement of BEVs is let them go drive one. Because once you've driven one, it changes your mindset of what they are. But when you have that level of trust to build it, to get everybody to buy into what you're doing, the change becomes easy. Whether it's BEVs, whether it's the digital age, whether it's remote services, whether it's remote services from a sales standpoint or from a service standpoint, people buy into it and they see the vision and they want to help you get there.
I think those two are going to become one with mobile technicians. And obviously, you do a phenomenal job with it. But I think that comes down to trust. And a lot of people don't trust their people to be able to invest that much money into a vehicle, to know that they're going to trust that person to go out there. They could make a mistake in somebody's driveway. And there's all these different things that can occur. But right now is the time to disrupt ourselves. And because if not, we're going to become disrupted by the industry, because there's enough things like you're talking about, BEVs. If we're not the one that's causing the disruption, we're going to be disrupted. But I see mobile technicians also being empowered to appraise vehicles and do other things other than what they're currently doing. They're already there. They've already done the MPI. Why not give them they have an OBD tool. Why not give them the access to the appraisal software and also leave a value while they're there? And in the stickiness, the loyalty. I mean, if that's me, I'm not going to ever consider shopping anywhere else, because you make it so easy.
Exactly. And you keep that circle of life going when you can make that offer. And we're not there yet. And certainly we want to get to the point to where everybody is kind of that acquisition manager for us, where they're reaching out and appraising vehicles or whatever else, because the data is there. It's just a matter of pulling it and expressing it.
Right. Sales,
you're going to go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say sales sells the car, but service is the one that keeps all the business. And in that result, there's only 47% of new vehicle transactions last year had a trade-in. So you ask yourself, what happened? The 4.3% scrappage rate. Where are all these cars going? And they're going to, it's no different than the service retention rate, right? They all don't come back because they might be going to Jiffy Lube, and now everybody's taking a crack at trying to acquire these vehicles. And we've all seen all the studies that are happening and what percentage fixed operations it's going to have over the next 5 years to 10 years of the business, and how the gross profit is going to migrate that way and more towards used and less towards new cars from a margin standpoint. That's where in my mind, all the resources should be devoted. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what I was thinking. And you really you almost have to suspend that fear of failure. You have to say, let's give it a try. Let's go make a run at it. Let's do remote service. Let's trust these guys. Let's do this. And be willing to take that risk and be willing to get out there, because I think you'll be surprised many, many times that you'll try something that you weren't sure about. And not only will that work, but those guys will come back with a new idea that you didn't even think of. So I think that's definitely the mindset to have, Brian. You're right.
Well, you hit the nail on the head with the fear of failure. A lot of people want to learn from everybody else's failures. And if you're going to be industry leading, you have to be out there to set the trend and learn from those mistakes. And when you learn from those mistakes, you take what is a list of procedures and turn it into and create a clean sheet of paper and make it what you want. Then you're not following somebody else's rules. So don't be afraid to take that clean sheet of paper. Go out and make some mistakes, because mistakes doesn't necessarily have to be failure. It could be educational points.
And with the speed of change, you almost have to do that, because the days of waiting to see if the other guy makes it or not, if he does, by then the train's left, guys. It's out of the station. Now you're trying to catch up to it. And with the acceleration factor that's going on, it's extremely difficult to catch up in this day and age. When you get behind the curve on the technology or on the concept, it's so hard to catch up. And I think that's something that a lot of guys relied on in the past, that, hey, I can always catch up. I can figure it out. I'll let him make the mistakes and spend the money, and I'll figure it out, and I'll do it.
I can go buy another widget on my website.
And that's
but you can't do that
work.
With this. Not with digital transformation and cultural mindset change. I'll say this, it's daunting, I know, for a lot of dealers out there that are saying, where do I begin? And, mobile service, EVs, different technicians. I've got to change all my lifts and the weight of these vehicles. And now the tech stack has to be completely redesigned. If I was to, so that people don't have to experience all these, there's still going to be some bumps in the road, but everybody's always asked me, where do you begin? I would begin through the customer's lens, and I would try to set an appointment on your website, mobile and desktop. I would try to rent a vehicle at your dealership and see what happens. I would try to call and get a status update on your vehicle. And, a lot of the, advice that everybody on this panel has given me, I sat there and just chunked it down right upon arrival. And I know that I was asking you guys a lot of questions, but I wanted to, go down into graphic detail as to who is greeting them. What's that reason that way the information is not getting collected accurately? That's kind of the genesis of the digital transformation, is correct data in. Are we verifying the odometer so we don't have to check it again? Now, hopefully it won't be an issue in a year or two, because over the air updates, that's part of your tech stack, the connected car, that you'll be able to populate your X-Time or your, Dealer FX tablet, have it pre-populated upon arrival. There's so many exciting things that are happening from a technology standpoint, and no pun intended, Steve, but it's all blue ocean in fixed operations. There's so much from that digitization that's just waiting to happen. It's just a matter of, and I don't even think it's about doing things. What I found is it's about taking things away, that there's so much redundancy. Why does the valet doing this and then the service advisor has to do it again? Why can't they trust that person? And why doesn't that technology talk to this technology? And by just connecting all that stuff and making it more efficient, I think that's a big part of the technician shortage, is the waiting of them just sitting back, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for all this technology to talk to each other and copy and paste. And I don't know, there's obviously always going to be a technician shortage, but I don't know how much of that's attributed to the downtime of them waiting for all this technology to talk to each other.
Well, we have an opportunity to help that technician shortage with BEVs coming into the industry, because it's not the same guy that's going to work on those things. Yes, we may have some of our senior guys that want to broaden their horizon, but as a rule, we're still got those guys that want to chase that thing as being a gearhead and make all the horsepower they can make and whatever else, and they're going to resist a BEV. And the BEV is really a computer with chairs sitting on top of it and a cab around it. So now we can chase that techie guy. And talking about doing the digital transition, about a month ago, I was at a seminar in Nashville. And while I was at the airport, there's a grab and go store by Hudson, but Amazon runs it. You walk in, you grab what you want, you walk out. They don't have to interact. And you would think, okay, well, people have fear of that or whatever. People was walking in, scanning their palm, walking in, grabbing their stuff that they wanted, and leaving. They don't have to wait in line. They don't have to wait for a cashier. They don't have to do anything. It bills their credit card. It knows what they took out of there, and it's done. That's what customers want. And Amazon's done a much better job than any of us at meeting customers at their level, and we have resisted meeting them and forced them through what we've done for years. And we have to loosen that up so that we can meet that digital transition, just like this meeting here today. This meeting today, 3 years ago, we thought, we need to meet live. Now this is the norm. And it took a pandemic to get us there, but the technology was already there. We just started embracing it. Well, the technology is already there for the digitalization as well in retail. We just haven't embraced it yet. And we got to do a much better job going forward of embracing it.
Yeah, I do think that all of these factors that you talk about, Brian and Ed, play into an operating system. And the dealers really have to come at their operating system from a customer-centric standpoint. So like Brian said, look at all of your systems, all of how you operate from the standpoint, if I was the customer, how would I feel about that? How would I feel about this? And I think we've advised, I've gone in a lot of times to talk to guys, and I advise them to start with their management team. Start with your leadership team and put that kind of thought process in place and make sure, do I have the right guy in the right seat? Does he have the right knowledge base? Are we doing the right thing? And then you can use that group as a filter for all the future stuff that comes at you. Because the key is ultimately you have to build an operating system for you and your customers. And they have to be customized to you. It isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And like people have said in the past, customers want a customized experience. Well, hey, guess what? Dealers need a customized operating system that works for them with their customers and factors in as sort of an umbrella the idea of what's happening in the rest of the industry. So you're not always chasing the latest whiz-bang thing. What you're looking at is all of these new things that come along, get filtered through your operating system for your customers in your market. If you can start down that road in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll put yourself in a much, much better position when surprises come along, because they will. They will.
You know, one key thing that I learned, and it seems insignificant, but as we were going through and we're trying to, boom paperless and on the service drive, the one biggest key driver that took me months to figure out is the way that the client was being sourced into the appointment scheduler by cell phone number, not by VIN, because we had some sounds so insignificant, but we had the service appointment scheduler defaulted to VIN number, and nobody knows 17 digits of their VIN number. It's why a phone number is it's 7 digits plus 3, so that everybody could remember it back when you did that. But 17 digits, nobody's going to memorize that. But they all know their cell phone number. And when we switched that, we finally had accurate information. It would pull in, so we didn't have to, worry about separate appointments that need to be merged. And we weren't rolling our appointments in the DMS or the appointment scheduling system with all these different spouses, on either side. It's my husband's car, my wife's car, and things don't sync up. So it's a duplicate appointment. They're following up with the other spouse on that other cell phone number that's not associated with the account, and the person's in the lounge, and they're asking for, Mr. Roberts and or Mrs. Roberts, and Ed's sitting there waiting for somebody to say Ed. And I mean, it was, I sat there and watched it over and over and over again. It was all data entry. So I think that what's going to liberate, and a lot of people go, well, you're trying to just, replace the whole industry with robots. What I believe is that the automation and digitization of all this stuff is actually going to bring back the humanity of the auto industry, because people don't want to have all this data entry administrative stuff where they're looking at a computer like a robot. They need to be interacting with people. And the only way you do that is you eliminate the redundant automated tasks that you can through all this stuff, which is, obviously labor intensive, but the end result is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's Brian, that's spot on. That's a lot of what we see as well out in the field, because you're right. That human interaction is where it's at. And when you're caught up doing data entry, which happens, Ed, as you know, a whole lot, especially in fixed ops, parts and service advisors, techs, that's a big thing, Ed.
Well, it's about building that connection with the client. We sell them once, and then we service them 10 times. Well, they're going to come back because of the relationship with those 10 times versus that one time. And we make it convenient to them rather than going in, like Brian said, and asking for the spouse's name because that's what they have on the repair order. They're not making that connection. There's no emotional connection there. But if you think those things aren't coming, we just talked about the grab and go a minute ago. Let's look forward past the 5-10 year mark. And let's look out 15 years when our vehicles are autonomous. And you go to sleep at night and it wakes up in the middle of the night and it drives itself down to get service and it's back in your driveway the next morning and there's never any downtime. That's what we're coming to, and it's up to us to kind of build that bridge in between. To build that bridge in between, we got to be open to change and trying something different than what we've tried before.
And if
you'll be selling advertising in your autonomous car.
Yeah, exactly. give them a reason to be loyal to you, and they will actually care where their car goes. Because I've asked people so many times, if your car can go get itself fixed, do you really care where it goes? No, you care that it's priced right and you care that it's fixed right. But if you give them a reason and a trust factor, Ed, and they'll tell their car, automated or otherwise, go to Bozo.
Exactly.
And that's what they'll do. And they'll do it with their phone or they'll do it with some other form of technology. But that loyalty is engendered by trust. And you do an amazing job of that, Ed, at your place. I know that.
Thank you. And there's some intentionality behind it because the best form of conquest is retaining. And when I can retain the ones that I have, it minimizes the money that I have to spend in conquest. And we all know, we see the studies of how much money we spend to conquest a customer just to get them on our lot. And then you amplify that times your closing ratio, and that's how much money you spent to sell them a vehicle. But we're always replacing. So when you can retain, it doesn't, but it almost eliminates the need to conquest. Obviously, you want to continue to grow, so you continue to conquest, but at a much different rate because your focus is on the retention piece of it.
Let me ask you guys a question. I'd love to know your opinion on this. So one of the projects I was working on before I got out of retail, and we were almost there, and it still haunts me at night, was there was a lot of vehicles that would come in. We had an appointment. It's set up a week, 2 weeks out, because there's obviously a lot of demand these days and a lot of wait. But a car could be 5 days on there. It's scheduled for regular maintenance. So there's a certain opco that we're diagging that already had, during the needs investigation. The client comes in, we MPI it, but that part was just sold the day before and the fill rate hasn't come back through. So we put them in a loaner car or rental car and for them to come back in. If that car is coming in and there's prime item concerns, you would think that the technology would talk to the parts department and it would automatically start filling that stuff. Because as I was going back in the shop, just looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, and I'm asking everybody what they're doing because I, see idle time. And they said, well, we already, they're in parts at 3 o'clock, 3:30. They're very efficient. They already had all the parts hung out in the shop. And they said, it's just a matter of the technicians putting them on the cars. So there's nothing really to do. I go, well, there's got to be something to do. They said, well, we don't know what's coming in tomorrow in terms of parts. I go, well, it's in, so I'm trying to look at it. And I'm like, there's got to be some way to connect these two with cycle time. How many more ROs could you write if all those parts were already, like some technology knew that they were coming in and within some probability? I have to think that that's another piece of the technician shortage, because then I was doing a fire drill the next morning on stuff that they knew about 5 days before.
Well, that's an efficiency standpoint, and technicians get paid on what they do. And when they're pulling a vehicle in and then they have to pull it back out because the part's not there or whatever else, that's efficiency. We're stopping them from making money. There's no money in pulling that thing back and forth, and they get paid on what they do. And that's where, looking forward to the next 3 to 5 years, and I really look forward to this, is getting more and more of that connected vehicle data so that I can plan for that. Not only can I plan for that repair when it's coming in because I know what's up with it, I also see the failure rate of certain components, and that helps me with my breadth and depth of my parts department so that I'm not putting that last part on. that I had the depth because I know that I'm going to use 3 of those this week. And that's where connected vehicle data is really going to help us all if we utilize that information coming to us. But if we just take it on a step-by-step basis or case-by-case basis where they're coming in, all right, let's see what's up with, we can use that data and really predict where we want to go. And it also really predict what's going to go wrong with the vehicle with prognosis and kind of be able to plan certain repairs at certain mileage points or certain time points. When we can do those things, we'll become more efficient.
Yeah, I think the answer to your question, Brian, comes down to leveraging the data to do a better job of forecasting. And I think a lot of things, the dealers will say, well, it doesn't happen the same way all the time. And you go, no, it doesn't. But if over time you start to look at this over a week, over a month, over 3 months, a year, it takes on a pattern. And there is a predictability to it. But as Ed says, you have to leverage that data. And if you can do that, then you can put a system in place that will give you the predictability that will allow people to say, oh, yeah, I'm done with today, but I'm working on the 15 that are going to come in tomorrow for me, because they know 15 is roughly what they're going to get tomorrow. Now, maybe it's 16 or maybe it's 14 or 13, but they have something to work on because it's been pre-planned. And I think that's the data part of it that Ed was talking about. And I think that'll answer that predictability issue.
I think that's one of the most valuable things that dealers don't even know that they have is their first party data. You know, there's independent service providers are very, you know, especially the big chain ones are very strong at leveraging that data. And it's almost more valuable than the work itself, you know, and what they can do and who they sell it to. And I don't know that every dealership knows they're sitting on top of an oil reserve of data. They just have to drill into it.
Yeah, they do. And they said I think it was 2019 or 2020 is the first time the data became more valuable than gold. I mean, when they looked at the value of gold and they looked at the value of data that you see, and that's what gets expressed when people go, well, how can Tesla be worth so much? And how can they be so much more valuable? It's the data, guys. Isn't the Tesla build so many more cars than General Motors? They have more accurate data that they are then able to leverage to put more predictability, more, you know, assumptions into their business, which allow them to run more efficiently. And that's how you win. I mean, that's what business is.
I love this conversation.
One thing I will say, Steve, is that for all the times Ed Roberts, Brian, is on the Fixed Ops Roundtable, Ed is not afraid to try something new. In fact, Ed will say, bring it on. I want to see this new technology. I want to see it. I want to be the first to see if I can poke some holes in it. He asks questions, and Ed is not afraid to take those risks. So in the time we have left, everybody, if we could do this, could I ask each of you to take about a minute? Here we are, middle of November, holidays coming up real quick, coming at the end of the year and, you know, early in 2023. What advice do you have for the dealers, managers watching today? And I'll start with you. Steve, I'll come to you next, and Brian, I'll have you take it home. But kind of sum it all up in a lightning round. Ed, if you could go first.
It's developing our people, and it's not just developing the technicians. I'll talk about it from a technician standpoint because it's easier for us to relate to that, but it's developing people, and it's creating a regimented training program and letting them know that I'm not here to zap you. If you make a mistake, we're going to learn from it and we'll move forward. A lot of times when someone does try something different and it doesn't work, we zap them. And then that reserves them from trying to do that going forward. But let's look at it from a technician standpoint, talking about development. We got new technology that comes out in the vehicle. We send the salespeople out with it, show them all the technology. It comes into service because the customer can't figure out how to make it work. The technician's never seen it. Now he's got to make a repair on it, whether there's anything wrong with it or not. And if we took the time to develop them and put their butts in the seats, just like the BEVs put their butts in the seats, and let them experience it, then they know how to do it. And it becomes more seamless. And it might not even come into the shop because it's just about educating the customer on how to fix it. So it's developing our people from every aspect of our business.
Love it. Steve, you got about a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, if I had to make a suggestion, I would say start working on your customized operating system for yourself. So get with your leadership team and really start to pick this thing apart. Start to look at it from the standpoint of the customer and start to look at all the different things that happen in your store. And there are a lot of moving parts going on in the store. look at them from the standpoint of the customer, and then also look at them from the standpoint of how you operate. How do you handle these things on a consistent basis? And one of the things you see, and I say to Ed again, is in Beaux-Arts operation, it's very process oriented, it's very customer oriented, and it's the same thing every single time. In other words, it's like McDonald's. You know, you get what you get, you know what you're getting. You know, it's that kind of a mindset. But you have to have that consistent, repetitive communication with customers that builds that trust. And that's what Ed has. And he kind of smiles and goes, oh, yeah, doesn't everybody? But it's not an easy thing to do. So I would ask somebody, start working on your operating committee through your leadership team and use that as the filter to think about these future things, because you're going to have stuff come at you that the three of us have never even heard of or thought of. And wouldn't it be nice, instead of to have to make the decision yourself as a dealer, if you could run it through a committee of guys that have been used to thinking that way and thinking about it? I mean, that's what I would suggest.
Brian?
So I would say, just to tag on to what both, Steve and Ed were saying, is when you look at it through the customer's lens, which I'll get into here in a second, and you have the trust and you have a culture which makes your team more elastic, they're more receptive to the change. When they trust you and you trust them, they eventually get to the point where they say, bring it, what's next? It might not be the way it starts out, but the way that I would say, because I know that I used to always seek it out, and I contacted everybody on this panel and many more, trying to look for this fountain of youth or the road to El Dorado, which doesn't exist. It's just a lot of tough work. So I start with, like what Steve's saying, with looking at it through the customer's lens, and I would do two different things. I would say, what's the ideal journey that I want my clients to experience when they arrive on the drive? From that point, what does it look like when they go to the lounge? What's the level of communication? What's the status updates? What's ideal, perfect, future state look like? And once you have that mapped out, which is typically easy for a team to do, then start off with, okay, what's current state look like? And let's just be brutal with our reality and put it side by side. And now let's see, where are the biggest gaps and what can we attack? Because if you try to boil the ocean all at one time, it's not going to work. So you have that end goal in mind. That way everybody's aligned towards the same North Star. And that would be my advice going into 2023.
Everybody, the acceleration of change. We have three great leaders with us here today. I want to thank them, but before I do, I want to thank especially Steve Woessner, because Steve has been telling me for months, Ted, we've got to have a panel on this acceleration of change. We've got to get some great leaders to talk about that. So, Steve, I want to commend you and thank you and Blue Oceans Global Consulting for all you do for the industry. Steve is a great resource, everybody. If you don't know him, you should. He's on LinkedIn, easy to reach, and a great friend of the Fixed Ops community. So, Steve, on behalf of the Fixed Ops Roundtable, thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Ed, happy Thanksgiving. And Brian, happy Thanksgiving. And everybody, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.